At my direction, the United States Armed Forces conducted an extraordinary military operation in the capital of Venezuela. Overwhelming American military power, air, land, and sea, was used to launch a spectacular assault. And it was an assault like people have not seen since World War II. It was a force against a heavily fortified military fortress in the heart of Caracas to bring outlaw dictator Nicolas Maduro to justice. This was one of the most stunning, effective, and powerful displays of American military might and competence in American history. No nation in the world could achieve what America achieved yesterday, or frankly, in just a short period of time. All Venezuelan military capacities were rendered powerless as the men and women of our military, working with U.S. law enforcement, successfully captured Maduro in the dead of night. It was dark. The lights of Caracas were largely turned off due to a certain expertise that we have. It was dark and it was deadly. But captured along with his wife, Cilia Flores, both of whom now face American justice. Maduro and Flores have been indicted in the Southern District of New York. These highly trained warriors, operating in collaboration with U.S. law enforcement, caught them in a very ready position. They were waiting for us. They knew we had many ships out in the sea, just sort of waiting. They knew we were coming. So they were in a ready, what's called a ready position, but they were completely overwhelmed and very quickly incapacitated. There's no equipment like what we have, and you see that even if you just look at the boats. You know, we've knocked out 97% of the drugs coming in by sea. 90%. Each boat kills on average 25,000 people. We knocked out 97%. And those drugs mostly come from a place called Venezuela. We're going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition. So we don't want to be involved with having somebody else get in, and we have the same situation that we had for the last long period of years. So we are going to run the country until such time as we can do a safe, proper, and judicious transition.
This was an audacious operation that only the United States could do. It required the utmost of precision and integration within our joint force. And the word integration does not explain the sheer complexity of such a mission. An extraction so precise, it involved more than 150 aircraft launching across the Western Hemisphere in close coordination, all coming together in time and place to layer effects for a single purpose: to get an interdiction force into downtown Caracas while maintaining the element of tactical surprise. After months of work by our intelligence teammates to find Maduro and understand how he moved, where he lived, where he traveled, what he ate, what he wore, what were his pets, in early December, our force was set pending a series of aligned events. Key was choosing the right day to minimize the potential for civilian harm and maximize the element of surprise, and minimize the harm to the indicted personnel, so as the president said, they could be brought to justice. Over the course of the night, aircraft began launching from 20 different bases on land and sea across the Western Hemisphere. In total, more than 150 aircraft, bombers, fighters, intelligence, reconnaissance, surveillance, rotary wing were in the air last night. We arrived at Maduro's compound at 1:01 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, or 2:01 a.m. Caracas local time, and the apprehension force descended into Maduro's compound and moved with speed, precision, and discipline towards their objective and isolated the area to ensure the safety and security of the ground force while apprehending the indicted persons. On arrival into the target area, the helicopters came under fire, and they replied with that fire with overwhelming force in self-defense. One of our aircraft was hit but remained flyable, and as the president said earlier today, all of our aircraft came home, and that aircraft remained flyable during the rest of the mission. As the operation unfolded at the compound, our air and ground intelligence teams provided real-time updates to the ground force, ensuring those forces could safely navigate the complex environment without unnecessary risk. The force remained protected by overhead tactical aviation. Maduro and his wife, both indicted, gave up and were taken into custody by the Department of Justice, assisted by our incredible U.S. military.
Venezuela's Vice President Delcy Rodriguez has reportedly been sworn in as president with the permission of American authorities. James Matthews has more.
That was an American president who didn't like what he saw in Venezuela and has gone in and removed the sitting president. He spoke about what comes next. That's the key question in all of this. And he said the Americans are going to be running this country for the foreseeable future. The way he put it, we're going to run the country until we can do a safe, proper and judicious transition. Presumably Donald Trump will decide what judicious means in all of this. Calls himself the president of peace. Clearly, peace in Venezuela will be peace very much on his terms. And he spoke about boots on the ground. He was asked about that. How would Venezuela look in terms of America's involvement? His answer to that was, yeah, boots on the ground, we're not afraid of it. He didn't expand on what exactly that would mean in terms of a US military presence, but clearly oil in Venezuela is uppermost in his thoughts. He spoke at some length about how American companies would go in, much money would be made, he said, to the benefit of Venezuelans. But he did say, phrases like, we're going to do, spoke about we are going to do a lot of business in terms of oil interest for the United States. Something else he spoke about and was asked about was Cuba. I suppose that's the next logical question in all of this. If a sitting head of state is removed from one country, can it happen anywhere else? He was asked about Cuba. His answer was, Cuba is not doing well right now. I think Cuba is going to be something we end up talking about. We want to help the people in Cuba and the people forced out of Cuba and living in this country. Marco Rubio spoke on Cuba. He said it's a disaster run by senile, incompetent men. If I lived in Havana and I worked in the government, I'd be concerned. I mean, you could almost substitute Cuba for Venezuela in that particular context. And I suppose that's the bigger overarching question, isn't it, Jane? Not just what happens in Venezuela. And that is extremely significant. In terms of who runs it, Donald Trump said, well, some of the people behind me are going to be running it. I don't know quite where this vice president, now president, sits in all of this. Donald Trump said that she's spoken to Rubio and it was all going well. We want to make Venezuela great again. That same vice president this morning was talking about a brutal assault. She was demanding proof of life pictures of Nicolas Maduro. So, that's where we are. Hugely significant in terms of what happened last night.